I'm talking with Paul Parish. He's one of the Blue Hotel artisans and in Springfield, West Virginia. And Paul's going to explain what he does and what he makes and his process, materials, and then show us some of the finished products.
Okay. What I do is create reproductions of 18th century tape looms, which were devices which were used to make tape, which was like this, and
Which would be used for what purpose, Paul?
it would be used for all kinds of things: trim, decoration, waistbands for aprons, ties for petticoats, just about anything that a piece of tape like that could be functional for.
Okay.
Also, in a more coarse form, it would be used for like tying up packages, feed sacks, and that sort of thing. And they were also used as kind of a busy project because they followed the concept of the idle hands was the devil's workshop. So many of these things were made strictly so that the ladies would have something to do in their social evenings or whatever, sitting around making tape or that sort of thing. The tape loom itself probably originated at least in the 12th century and came from Europe, brought into the colonies. And the ones I make here are a variety from different colonies, about the 1760s, 1770s, somewhere along that line. I make them out of various woods: maple, cherry, walnut, poplar, and pine are the woods they use for the most. And some of them are made rather elegantly, and some of them are just kind of very utilitarian. They're all based upon existing originals that are in museums or living history sites, or some come from pictures and paintings that you come across from time to time on the internet or in books and so on like that.
So you see what other people have done, and then you'll duplicate them.
Yes. Yeah, I try to replicate them. I don't do exact reproductions of them because that is just not, it takes away from what the original person did.
Yeah.
But also, there was no real such thing as a loom maker, so to speak. Each one maybe only made one or two in their entire life. But they did follow certain basic designs and so on like that, according to where they came from. A lot of mine are from the Pennsylvania origin, and they all show some similar aspects to it.
And how did you learn your craft, Paul?
By accident. Yeah, about 1994, my daughter, we were at an 18th century event. My daughter saw one of these, and it was, "Can you make me one of these?" Well, I did, and I swore up and down I would never make another one. So about a year or two later, I made another one and went along, and finally, in about the past year and a half, the thing has really taken off, and I've now made a total of 78 of them.
Wow.
I've made 31 this year so far.
Now, do you make them, well, so to say, do you make them on spec, or you make some, probably most of them you do, but you also make some to order, or someone tells you, "I'd like to have it made out of a particular type of wood," or they see something in a magazine and they say, "Can you make this?"
Any of those, actually. I do, most of them I make on spec and usually run out of them, but I do make them, and somebody say, "Well, I don't like that design, but I'd rather have it like in cherry or something like that," and I can do that as well. Every once in a while I get one that comes along, a really good experience I had at the end of the summer. I made one from a picture that came from North Carolina. It was about 1770s or something like that. And I'd made it simply as a display piece because it was a relatively crude, unelaborate type thing. And the lady says, "I want to buy that." So I finally let her have it. And then that was about a year ago. And toward the end of summer there, a lady emailed me, said, "You make tape looms?" I says, "Yes." She says, "Well, I'd like for you to make one for me." I says, "Okay, what would you like?" She said, "I'd like one that, like I saw, is tall and skinny," which narrows it down. So long story short, come to find out, the one she'd seen was actually the one I'd made that the lady had bought. So I said, "Yeah, I'll make another one like that." Well, come to find out, she is the weaver at the Daniel Boone Homestead historic site in Pennsylvania. So the one I made for her, I kind of dressed it up a little bit. I did dovetails on it and and so on like that. It's being used out there as a demonstration in the Daniel Boone homestead. And the reason it did that one is because of the Wilderness Trail and all the stuff that went down through North Carolina like that Boone traveled. There's a possibility that somewhere along the line it could have overlapped a little bit. So it is accurate to time and place, which is what I try to keep up with.
And I think you may have said this already, Paul, but what is the time period that when these were mostly used, when they were when you would find them most commonly?
You would find them in the colonies, I would say, just about any time up until about the first third of the 1800s, the 19th century, when they started making a commercial version of this thing, and then slightly after that, they started actually making the tape commercially. And these things kind of just went away from there. These were probably more common in the ordinary colonial household than what people believe the fabric loom was. Not every house had a fabric loom. As a matter of fact, few of them did. But there was always an opportunity to need some of this stuff. And since it was easy to do, easy to make a loom, so to speak, some of them anyway, and it's probably quite common. Now, I think they were probably used till they were used up. And finally, when they had no practical use, they probably ended up going in the fireplace or whatever. And that's why so few people really know about them. There are several big collections of them, one in the Deerfield Museum, another one up in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, at the Mercer Museum, which I based a couple of mine on the ones in the Mercer Museum. So there are still some out there, and there's probably some really dandies laying around in old attics and things like that. Landis Valley out in near Lancaster, they do a lot of tape loom work out there. They have a pretty good collection of them out there too.
And what's the most exotic wood that you've ever worked with, or say, any tropical woods or
No,
anything?
I keep it to the woods that we would use here in the colonies, which have been the cherry, the maple, the walnut, the poplar, and the pine. Cherry and walnut are probably the ones I use for the fancy ones like this for the most part, and some maple. Then the others tend to be whatever I got laying around, poplar, pine, whatever. But
So this one right here is what's that made out of? Yeah.
This is maple.
Maple, okay.
And it's patterned after the one that's in the 1773 painting by Copley of Thomas and Sarah Mifflin, who was the first governor and first lady of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And in that portrait, Sarah Mifflin is sitting working on a loom very similar to that, and that's the inspiration I got for that one.
And what tools do you use to make these, Paul? Are they there's a lot of handwork, or you have jigs, or what?
A combination of both. More and more all the time, it's going more and more toward completely handwork. I use some power tools and stuff for some of the planing and some of the rough cutting and so on like that. But the finishing, the cutting, the finishing the grooves in the handle boards and all the other stuff like that. For the most part, I make my own beams, which are these things back here, the cloth beam and a warp beam, either octagonal or round ones. Use a lathe on that. Probably occasional chisels if I really need to do it, like some of the steps, the index and all like that. So more and more all the time, it's coming more and more almost completely handwork, because it does a better job, and some things you just can't find a tool to do the job for you, that's for sure.
Now you think, and you may not have much of an idea of this, Paul, but the people who buy your looms, do they mostly buy them for just as a collector's piece, something to have on their mantle, or do some people actually use them?
The good part about it all, and it's my intention, and I'm glad about it, is the majority of them ends up actually being used. And that's the neat part about it. They may not use it for anything else, but just have something to do, kind of a tactile thing to play with, but they are being used. I don't think very many of them ends up just being a mantelpiece setter. That's the good part. That's what I intend them for it to be, and that's how they work.
Do they ever show you the stuff that they've made?
Oh yes, oh yes.
So you get some pretty interesting, creative
Yes.
Pieces of tape that come off of your looms.
Every once in a while I come back, look what I made on this one. I go, wow.
It must be very fulfilling.
It is, it is. And there's a lot of interest in them for the people that do the fibers and wool stuff, not necessarily 18th century people, but these people are doing the wool and like today, and I've made a number of looms for them, which is a completely different venue, but they use them as they would have been used in the 18th century.
Very
And I
nice.
think it's
That must be very
It
fulfilling.
is, it
Yeah.
is. And it's kind of like word of mouth. If somebody says, "Where'd you get that?" And the next thing you know, it just keeps going like that. So, like I said, I've made 78 of them now, and 31 of them this year. So,
Nice. And so how many years have you been doing this, Paul?
making these, I've tinkered with it since about 1994, but I've really been into making these with any volume at all for the past 3 years. And every year seems more and more and more.
And you have a website where
We don't.
people? No,
We
no,
don't.
no.
We just, me and my wife operate a little business over in Old Town. And she does 18th century kids clothing, and I do this, and we just kind of advertise out from the 18th century events and stuff we go to, and things like here at the Blue Hotel and all like that. And it just seems that somebody picks up a card, and next thing you know, here's a call or whatever else. So, yeah, the website we probably couldn't even keep up with it, probably.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get to the point that
It's a
gets to the
business.
point it's a complete job.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I would be able to do to them what I really want to do. Because sometimes you get with them and you go, I'm leaving it alone, and just walk away from it a couple of days, because sometimes it's pretty aggravating, because wood will let you do anything to it it wants you to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just best just to let the thing go. And
Well, Paul, could you show me on one of these looms how it works, how the loom actually works, I mean, just sort of where the thread goes, how the.
I could, but my wife has hers over in the house,
Oh, okay.
warped up.
Good.
And she's using it over there. You
Okay.
can probably get a really good demonstration.
Good.
On it.
I'll do
Really see
that.
what it does.
I'll do that, and then I'll edit that in. I'll make
Okay.
that part of this.
Good.
Okay. Well, we've been talking with Paul Parish, and he showed us the tape looms that he's been making, and then we'll talk to Paul's wife, Alyssa. And thanks very much, Paul.
You bet.